Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Economic Times Awards for Corporate Excellence. Please give a round of applause and welcome on stage your host for the evening, Cyrus Sahukar.
Thank you so much for being here, ladies and gentlemen. Request you all to be seated. So, ladies and gentlemen, co-vaccinated and COVID-shielded, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you finally to the ET Awards for Corporate Excellence 2021. It's good to see so many wonderful familiar faces from all those video conferences and Zooms over the last 2 years. And it's also good to be reminded that the best and the brightest of corporate India aren't just pretty faces in tiny windows on our computer screens, but actually have bodies attached to them. This is a wonderful thing to notice. I can see many supporters of free speech here. Hello. Let me tell you why I swear by ET and have a slight problem with Twitter now. Once free speech absolutist Elon Musk owns Twitter, it will be like today's Tuesday, the world is now flat, or every Indian must watch this amazing film called Income Tax Files. Basically, anything and everything will go. ET, on the other hand, bless its pink soul, is a free speech relativist. Thankfully, it carries only facts and real facts. So, if you're an ET reader, today is Saturday, the world is round, and every Indian must watch me in shows like Potluck or Kaun Banega Shikharvati. Just plugging my stuff in. Now, on a slightly more serious note, once again, thank you all so much for being here and amazingly on time. The worst of the pandemic seems to finally be behind us, and all of us personally have faced tragedy these last couple of years, but we have come out of it wiser, dare I say, even stronger. The world's biggest vaccination drive has ensured that India has been undamaged, the economy is inoculated from global turbulence, and we are back in business. And the best of it all, we're all here. So before we begin today's proceedings, let's give everyone in this room a huge round of applause for keeping the big wheels turning. Thank you all so much. And a big round of applause also to our wonderful partner, Deloitte. A big thank you to them. Thank you. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Times Group, Mr. Samir Jain, to join us over video link to deliver his welcome speech. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Samir Jain.
Good evening, honored guests, heads of political and economic states, mega ladies. It's wonderful to have you here, titans of industry, vaccinators of the economy. We meet today after 2 difficult, eventful years. Sometimes one sees things more clearly after stepping out of the frame. The Mona Lisa cannot step out of her frame to see the value of herself in the painting. But that's exactly what we've done these last 2 years, having objectively seen our own beauty and value in the mirror. The only caution now is not to be narcissistic. Yet today, inspiration and energy abounds. For 40 years at the helm of Times Group, I've emphasized the importance of positive news in our media to not only inform but also inspire the nation. And today, it's invigorating to see meta guys of this anti-fragile nation thrive and not be fooled by randomness, attracting investors with their khatirdari and internationally known public display of affection. We're stealthy and fast, faster than Bolt in leading the world in all things tech. We're resilient. We know the game of thinking fast and slow, but acting fast as we rebounded from COVID. We've COVID-shielded the world and are the world's vaccine hub. On a good day, we vaccinate an entire Australia. We own our own risks as we're en route to becoming an Atmanirbhar $5 trillion economy in 5 years. And what's more, we just hit a century of unicorns. Times Group has chartered India's tale for 185 years. India's transition from being a British vassal to a Swadhin nation, reclaiming its pre-British era glory, has been mirrored by Times Group in its journey from newspapers to being a powerhouse of brands and home to India's largest digital products company, Times Internet, siliconed by Satyan. For both India and us, these growth curves have not been linear, but exponential. Most of India's growth over a century have happened only in the past 30 years. And even in these 30, the last 10 make up the lion's share. A decade ago, we had one unicorn. Today we have 100, making us the third largest unicorn cluster, valued at 300 billion. ET Awards for Corporate Excellence have set a benchmark for innovation and sustainable business leadership. Tonight, we're gathered to honor those who have innovated in leading their organizations and India towards continued excellence. Our past is glorious, our future shining. Today is day zero. None will overestimate us, for we will surpass all forecasts. Today, as India's shapers, movers, thinkers, let's resolve to strive harder towards such excellence. Wishing you all a great evening ahead. Thanks for being with me and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jain. Now, there may be a war in Ukraine. Nimbu Pani may soon be costing more than a peg of single malt. And surprisingly, Kangana Ranaut may have been unnaturally silent in the last few months. But India has managed to hold its ground against all these challenges and so much more. Hence, the CEO panel discussion that we are about to have now is not just apt, but also has the very folks who are holding fort share their thoughts with us tonight. I'd like to invite on stage ET Deputy Resident Editor Mumbai, Arijit Burman, who will be moderating the panel. May I now also invite on stage Hindustan Unilever CEO Sanjeev Mehta, State Bank of India Chairman Dinesh Kumar Khara, JSW Group Chairman Sajjan Jindal, Standard Chartered Bank CEO Zareen Daruwala, and Piramal Group Chairman Ajay Piramal. What a lovely, wonderful bunch of people here. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's give them a huge round of applause. The topic of discussion is India in a volatile world, navigating challenges, building strengths. And now, without further ado, over to you, Arijit.
Thanks, Iris. Good evening, everyone. To fully grasp today's topic, India in a volatile world, navigating challenges, building strengths, I thought it's best to do a quick rendezvous around the world. Believe me, it'll be less than 2 minutes. Okay, so time starts now. The US, big economic red alert during the first week of May, a surprise GDP contraction. Crossing the Atlantic, things are certainly weirder. The UK is facing a coalition of awfulness, super hot labor market, just like US, runaway energy prices, just like Europe. Germany, big gas problem. Either pay for gas on Putin's terms or go cold turkey. China, well, in trouble too, colossal COVID wave, and when China is in trouble, global growth is as too. So, among all this, India seems to be a good place. Hot, humid, and happening. But then came this headline from the Economic Times only on Wednesday. RBI goes for a shock hike to rein in inflation. What does that mean? My EMI certainly likely to go up, but for our panelists here, I don't think any one of you have such existential problems. No EMIs for your 6 BHK penthouses, no car loans, etc., etc. But will your capex plans suffer? Will it dampen your animal spirits? I think there's one man in this panel who's clearly raring to go despite all this, but we'll talk about that later. But first off, Mr. Khara, I wanted to ask you, were you shocked when the rate hike came? We weren't clearly expecting it.
It was not a shock but a surprise. Why? Because it came at a point when the policy was just announced a few days back only. But yes, of course, if you really ask me, it's a very timely action taken by RBI, considering the fact the kind of inflation numbers which were seen and also the kind of trajectory which was visible at that material point of time, keeping in view of the global scenario, I think perhaps it's a decision taken at the right time. And maybe, if at all I may elaborate a bit about this, the kind of liquidity surplus in the economy was almost as high as about 5.7 trillion. This 40 basis point also is going to suck about 87,000 crore worth of liquidity in from the system. But nevertheless, I would say that I believe that the RBI will be very closely watching the inflation print and accordingly will be calibrating the interest rates if at all required going forward.
But the worry was just when we were seeing a credit growth in the banking sector reaching double digits after a long time, 11.2% growth year on year, that's when the news happened. Will it dampen the spirits, so to speak?
No, I do agree that the economy had started witnessing a strong growth path, but nevertheless, one cannot ignore the global macro developments, and one has to ensure that there should be adequate order in the economy. And I think from that point of view, the regulator was well in their thoughts, and they have kept these thoughts in their mind, and accordingly they have acted upon.
But Zareen, 50 BPS hike in CRR, supposed to be sucking out 87,000 crore from the banking system. That is where we believe a lot of industrialists seem to be a little bit more apprehensive.
I would say, as Mr. Khara said, that the surplus still is quite high in the banking system, and frankly, banks are quite keen to lend. It's the credit growth which has been muted. We've seen corporates really in the de-levering mode in the last 2 years. The debt to equity of corporates, the top corporates, if we look at some of the listed companies, it's come down to as low as 0.6 debt to equity ratio. So to that extent, with banks having lower net NPAs, closer to 2%, and with surplus liquidity and corporate balance sheets being very resilient and very strong, I think, to my mind, as bankers would be quite keen to lend. And clearly, household indebtedness as a percentage of GDP, if you look at India, India is quite low compared to maybe a UK or US. It's just around 30%. So to that extent, even the individual ability to borrow is quite high in India. There's still some scope. So as banks, clearly, we would be quite keen to lend.
But Mr. Khara talked about a very important point about tackling inflation. Mr. Mehta, I was reading an interview of yours where you said in the 30 years that you worked in Unilever, you've never seen such a situation. Really? I mean, we've seen several wars, crude going up and down, but that's quite a statement.
Yeah, absolutely. When the crude went up in the early part of this millennium, it was just crude dominated, which led to inflation. But right now, we are looking at many other commodities, including palm, for instance. And when you reach a situation where a common man reduces the consumption of soap or detergent powder, then it does become a cause for concern. So the question that you had raised to Mr. Khara about interest rate, I think it was inevitable. We must understand that as a government, as a governor, you have a task to also look after a large majority of your population. And inflation always bites the poor much harder. So there was very clear indicator that steps would have to be taken to rein in the inflation. Having said that, I don't believe this is a structural demand-led inflation. And this has got a lot to do with the constraints which came in during the COVID period and supply chain constraints. For instance, palm, which has become a big issue in our country as well. That happened primarily because at the time of harvest, there weren't enough labor to pluck the crop. That's what happened in India in 2020 during the tea season. So this is not a structural demand-led. Geopolitical issues also aggravated the situation. I think another 6 months, if the Ukraine crisis settles down, then we could start seeing the tapering of inflation. But right now, yes, it is a cause for concern.
Stagflation, is it too extreme, or are we really staring at such a scenario?
At a macro level, we are still not in that state. The headline that was carried was my concern that we should not let the country get entrapped in that. We have to be very cognizant of that. If we look at it, we have just about recovered last year what we lost in the first year of pandemic. And we were still in the process of recovery. So it will be a very fine balancing act. The governor will have to ensure that you balance it in a manner that you don't stifle growth, but at the same time, try to rein in the inflation as much as possible.
Let me ask two of the other captains of India Inc. here. Mr. Piramal, does it dampen the mood, your capex plans, or you want to go all guns blazing?
I think at the present moment, I don't see capex being dampened today because I do feel that there is demand. And if you look at the future with the geopolitical situation, I feel that India is well positioned. And capex, you go through these cycles, there would be some costs that rise in interest today. But I don't think today is the time when people, at least I don't think from people whom I talk to, anybody is reducing capex plans as of now.
But those big bang plans, or has that been moderated into more moderate, mid-level expansions, more brownfield and large greenfield projects?
So what I see is that people are looking at various sensitivity scenarios, but I am not seeing that there's going to be a huge cut down. At the most, one would watch for a few more months to see how things are. But overall, at least in my view, it's still optimistic. Yes, these are challenges. The whole world is facing them. But I think I still feel that we are on a good wicket. And India, in terms of demand, there is demand for India's products in India and outside.
Mr. Jindal, you have not just steel, but very ambitious plans in the green energy space. What's happening around the world? On one hand, input prices are going up. But you're enjoying a commodity super cycle at the steel front. How does that calibrate vis-a-vis your renewable plans or even steel plans?
So let me first answer your earlier discussion with the panel about this 40-50 basis points which RBI has increased, and Mr. Khara said he was surprised, which is a fact. But when the whole world is going through this big change and the commodity prices are going up, inflation is high. Even in US, one has never heard that US can go through a inflation of this level, and India is also following that same trend. And as Sanjeev mentioned, that the poor man gets maximum affected on inflation. So I think it's the primary responsibility of RBI to see that the inflation doesn't go up. And therefore, I was surprised on the contrary that it's not increased enough, though it affects me as a borrower. But still, we have not had such a long run of such a, let's say, benign interest rates. I have not seen in my business career to date. So therefore, I would say it's okay. We need to control inflation. So that's one part. Secondly, about renewable, I think the way India is going to depend on energy, or the world is going to depend on energy, it can't be on coal, given the pressure on our global warming and our sustainability. We have to move towards renewable or towards a clean energy which is green, which is not emitting carbon dioxide. So the only way is you go nuclear or you go solar, wind, hydro, whatever. So therefore, I don't think mankind has an option. So this is the only way forward.
Nuclear is a political hot potato, but.
Sorry?
Nuclear is a political hot potato, but.
Yeah, I mean, it is hot potatoes for sure. Nobody wants it in their backyard. That's also clear. But India is a very large country. But we do need nuclear because you need baseload power plants. And nuclear is the only way forward. Today, in Sweden, in Denmark, in Finland, they are building nuclear power plants. So, those countries, if they can build, why can't we, as a developing country, why can't we do that? So that's one. But still, we need to build these renewable power plants. But given today's high cost of steel and high cost of commodities, that's also become a challenge. Because now that cost has gone up dramatically and people have put their projects on hold. So we have to watch how these commodities come back down.
But volatility also opens up new opportunities. And I said that I'll ask you this question. And clearly you want to do something mega in cement. We have all been talking about it. But tell me, there's been a constant grouse about when it comes to Indian promoters and financing. They say that raising money for LBOs in India is extremely difficult. Indian banks cannot lend against shares. You have to rely on foreign banks. How big a handicap is that for both you and Mr. Piramal, who've both done large acquisitions?
Now, so I think that's clearly a big handicap for the Indian corporates. Because, Zareen is here representing foreign bank and Mr. Khara is representing Indian bank. And, I can't go to Mr. Khara to support me in lending because against shares, Indian banks are not permitted to lend. They can lend if I want to buy the asset, but if I want to buy the shares, they can't lend. So but Zareen can, she has the flexibility, or Ajay can, they have the flexibility as NBFC. But why not the Indian banking system? So this is something which we need to discuss, and we need to change that perspective of the RBI. That why not Indian banks should allow acquisition financing of share acquisition financing.
You want to add anything?
No, I totally agree with Sajan. If you look at it, the Indian banks are really the largest contributors in the economy. They can't lend. Foreign banks, with the exception of one or two like Zareen's, all of them have actually left the country. So where do you get finance? And promoters in India are now depending on funds, and these are foreign funds. The IRR of a foreign fund is anywhere between 20 to 25%. So it makes us uncompetitive in the global environment. I mean, today, with these large acquisitions, it's very difficult to fund them. Otherwise, you'll have some private equity coming in, getting it at a low price. So we are actually sapping the Indian economy. And probably these restrictions were put where banks couldn't lend for acquisition at the time, and people thought that there would be speculative buying. But today it's a very competitive, transparent process, and we should definitely allow that to happen.
So
and NBFCs are limited. They don't have enough of a capital to really fund large acquisitions like the cement acquisition Sajan is talking about.
No, what is sad, Arijit, is that we are letting go our marquee assets in India to foreigners because we cannot get it financed. I mean, Indian corporate cannot finance such big deals of 5 billion, 10 billion, whatever it is, and foreign companies can, as Ajay said, private equity comes and buys road assets and whatever which is giving very high returns.
Is that something that Indian banks should also look at, Mr. Khara?
We may not be permitted to fund buying the shares. But line of credits is something which we have done in the past when the Indian assets were acquired. That is something which we have already made available, and I think that came handy at the material point of time. I think Mr. Sajjan Jindal can probably confirm on that.
But private equity today is becoming more and more mainstream. They've raised a lot of money around the world. A lot of it is getting deployed in India. How do you see them? Are they friendly permanent capital, or you have a different point of view? Because a number of your subsidiaries have had private equity partners as well.
See, normally the only issue with the private equity is that they come with some kind of a definite time horizon. So the certainty of the equity, which is generally seen as a lender, which we normally see, and for that matter, any stakeholder would like to see the stability of the equity. That is, of course, something which is at risk in such situations. And if at all, whenever they offload in a chunk. So that also lead to the market disturbance as far as the listed equities are concerned. But yes, of course, I would rather say that this is one of the requirement, because if at all economies have to grow, then they have to also look at the private equity as an option. It may not be the only source, but it is still an option.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now joined by the Honorable Finance Minister, Sri Nirmala Sitharamanji. Zareen, you and I, we were having this discussion, and you said you somehow feel MNCs are more bullish on India than the Indian peers. I'll come to Mr. Mehta about that as well, although Hindustan Unilever, I don't know whether to call them an MNC anymore, but is that something that you really feel that?
No, I never said MNCs are more bullish. I said MNCs are bullish. Not more bullish than Indian corporates. I would say yes, and we're witnessing a lot of interest. I think the PLI scheme has evoked a lot of interest, especially given the China Plus One strategy. And we're already seeing the kind of interest that has come in the 12 sectors that government has invited. If one sees the power of some of the FDI, if we were to look at Vietnam and Samsung invested in Vietnam. Today, Samsung is 25% of Vietnam GDP. Of course, it's a small country, but that's the power of the investment that you see. And Samsung exports $66 billion annually from Vietnam. Wow. And 50% of their global phones and laptops are made, iPads are made in Vietnam. So that's the power of some of the global MNCs who come. And I think we need to supplement local capital with global capital coming to India. And other interesting thing that one is seeing is the global capability centers. Today we have 1,400 plus global capability centers. Accenture alone has 250,000 employees. Our bank has 27,000 employees just working in the global capability center. And that is really giving a lot of employment, having a very good second order impact. 45% of the companies outside their home market have India global capability centers. So that's quite telling that outside the home market, India seems to be the number 2 choice for global capability centers. So, yeah.
Mr. Piramal, we were talking about sources of capital that is available for industries, big and small, especially the smaller industries, the SMEs. In volatile times, we have seen the NBFCs playing a big role, lending a hand to smaller companies who don't enjoy the AAA rating. Mr. Deepak Parekh recently said that the arbitrage that the shadow banks had earlier vis-a-vis banks is going. So perhaps it's now time to revisit that argument that big NBFCs should get converted, and maybe even corporates get a look in to banks.
I think we'll have to really look at how do we want to do banking in the future. We talked about today credit growth being about 9% over the last few years. We are all convinced that India needs to grow at least 8% GDP, which is in real terms. So if you look at credit growth, must be about 18%. If we don't do that, we will not be able to reach our targets of 5 trillion of an economy. Our banks in India, we have just probably 30 or 40 large banks compared to the US, which has almost 4,000 banks. So we need to have more banking. We are supposed to have banking on tap, and that was announced in 2016. There's not been a single banking license which has been given on tap since then. So we'll have to relook at it, and after a certain size, I don't see NBFCs growing bigger because you need a permanent source of funding available. Today, we have to deepen the debt markets. We'll have to allow public deposits and put restrictions. I think when Mr. Parekh talked about the arbitrage, it was the regulations that were coming in for NBFC and banks, which is good. Let's do that. But let's also get the advantages of banking, which are there for some of the NBFCs.
But the permanent worry is that money is fungible, intergroup transfers. How do you monitor? That's been the perennial worry.
I agree. So let there be more transparency, let there be more regulation. I think that should happen. But that doesn't mean we don't have banking for large groups. Because in India, you do need promoters to be behind banks. Because as you know, cash is the only raw material for banks. So who will provide that? It's when you have a stable promoter base.
Mr. Mehta, we had touched upon inflation, and I wanted to come back and ask you this, that inflation on one hand is leading to weak demand conditions, but you also said in another recent interview that you're winning market share across channels, categories, both urban and rural. How is that possible?
No, there is nothing conflicting about it. When we talk about demand at aggregate, we talk about demand of the market. And when we talk about the market share, we talk about sharing the pie. And invariably what happens when times are tough, the consumers do gravitate towards large, trusted brands. And we have a lot of brand saliency, a lot of powerful brands. So it is not surprising that the consumers move towards. And the other thing, what we do ensure, that the product superiority does not go away. And even when it comes to share of voice, we ensure that the share of voice remains above the share of market. So the saliency is there, the product superiority is there, the trusted brands are there, and that leads to gaining market share. But these are two different things. And I think as a country, and also we would rather have the pie become bigger than just looking at gaining market share.
Zareen, we are running out of time, so quick question. Has IBC been the biggest banking sector reform that you've seen in the last few years? And both of you can answer. Mr. Khara as well.
I would say it's really one of the good reforms because we're seeing the balance of power between banks and the borrowers much better than what we saw before.
Fear of God amongst corporates.
And I think banking sector would have solved at least 5 lakh to 6 lakh crores of distressed assets thanks to the IBC. Also, I think it has brought better credit discipline because borrowers know that it can't only be the bank issue. It is borrower also who has an obligation to resolve it. So I think it has really helped.
But Mr. Jiddal, is there a worry that it's also perhaps killing entrepreneurship?
So while I'm one of the strongest proponent of IBC and supporter of IBC, and the fact that Mr. Mittal came and invested in India is because of the IBC. That became apparent. So therefore, IBC is definitely a fantastic reform that this government did. The challenge only is that it has killed a lot of entrepreneurs in India. I mean, India is a country of entrepreneurs, and there are good and bad, both entrepreneurs. When you move, you will have some bad apples as well. So it is up to the banking system which should control the who to lend and who not to lend. So my only limited question is whether it has killed a lot of entrepreneurship in our country, because India is known for that.
But despite IBC, Mr. Khara, the problem is, a lot of people would argue, it's still taking too much time for a resolution.
I think the way I will respond this question is that IBC has helped in two major things. One, the ecosystem for resolution of the brownfield has come into existence, which was almost non-existent earlier. For a country like us, we were required to have one such effective system. And second, losing the control of an enterprise is no more a fiction, which was earlier being perceived as a fiction. And that's why, that is the other reason why the discipline has come in. What Mr. Jindal indicated in terms of losing some of the entrepreneurs have lost the control. Perhaps, the need of the hour is that there has to be adequate discipline for all those who borrow. And that is the other point which Zareen also mentioned, that we have seen a lot of discipline with the borrowers. Before they borrow, they think twice also. And I think in a way that is good. And that is ensuring that the capital is put to the right use and it is not led to some unhealthy practices. So I would say that overall, it's a very good development. And if we really look at the insolvency code, which has been adopted in many of the developed countries, it has taken almost 10 years plus. But nevertheless, it's an evolving code, and I'm sure with each of the next iteration, it is getting even better.
Mr. Piramal, last word to you. Too many tribunals?
So I think I just want to comment on the IBC and hence the tribunal. Overall, it's been in the right direction. The IBC is a good, as it said, the balance of power shifted. Earlier, if you borrowed, you were the powerful person. Now it's the other way around, or it's at least more balanced. I think the point is that we need to move this faster, because very often when companies are referred to the IBC, you will find that there is a lot of stress already, and timely action cannot be taken unless the final decisions are taken. So whether it's the NCLT and CLAT and everything goes up to Supreme Court, I've seen, we have to move faster, and we'll have to add more people so that the recovery will be better for the system, the companies can be revived. That's the only point.
We've completely run out of time. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for that extremely illuminating and reassuring discussion. Enough with my mutual fund investments. I think it's time to launch my own IPO. Oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I know that many of you have been wondering about why the 2021 ET Awards are taking place in 2022. We would like to tell you we have also noticed this. And no, I've been reliably told that it's not some kind of tax write-off and any purpose like that, but simply because of only one reason. The pandemic forced the 2021 ET Award ceremony to be postponed till things got better. It's a bit like the 2020 Tokyo Olympics that were held in 2021. I know it's all very confusing, but let me let you in on something very interesting. Now, the 2022 ET Awards will happen some 6 months from now. That's right, people. This year's ET Awards will be in much cooler temperatures. So, in a weird way, consider this, that this one right now is the ET Summer Collection, while the next one would be like ET's Fall Collection. In a fascinating display, there's a gentleman here who's showing me a tissue. He's written, "There go 5 minutes of my life that will never come back." I'm sorry about that, sir. We'll quietly move on. And let's get back to the heat of things. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is someone who is at the helm of navigating the challenges of the economy, which is a difficult job even on a good day, it has to be this one individual, whom I'd like to invite on stage to talk about, well, everything. That's the economy, and quite frankly, the economy is everything these days. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Finance and Corporate Affairs Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman. Thank you for being here, ma'am. Who will be in conversation with ET Executive Editor Bodhisattva Ganguly. Over to you.
Thank you, Cyrus, for those interesting remarks about the ET. I might. Yeah. About the next ET awards. Anyway, let's get through this one first. So thank you, Finance Minister, for once again gracing the ET awards function. You've come we are lucky enough to have you at a time of where the world economy is seeing seminal changes. There was obviously the rate hike by the Fed, the first, which had been much signaled, but the rate hike has finally happened. There is obviously the RBI rate hike, which happened a few days back, which is the start of a tightening cycle. So we are lucky enough to have you, what we think will be probably your first on-the-record reactions to this. So interest rates have gone up in India to 4.4%. They're likely to go up even more. If you look at the RBI's inflation projections, they're 5.7 for the whole year, 5.1 in the last fiscal. Will this affect the government's plan to revive the economy, which in the last budget was largely through a boost in capital expenditure?
Well, no, because with the crude prices internationally behaving the way it has behaved, prices have behaved, and also when situations such as the Russia-Ukraine matter, when we prepared the budget, there was no clue about the war. But certainly about the crude, there was enough and more speculations. So price in commodities, price in the crude, and also the global situation of disruption in supply chain were there before us even as we prepared for the budget. So I don't think, and also to be fair, the US Fed had very clearly indicated that they were going for quantitative restrictions and tightening. And therefore, I don't think we are caught by a surprise by the Reserve Bank of India taking its own step. And I don't see it affecting our infrastructure investment, which has been billed at 7.5.
So, no, I mean, the US Fed, it was well known that the US Fed would raise rates. I mean, that was, and they will continue raising rates for the next few quarters. Perhaps the RBI, there has been some talk that the RBI was behind the curve and therefore they had to start, but it did come as something of a surprise, did it not? I mean, the next monetary meeting was just a few weeks away.
It came as a surprise because it's between the two MPCs. But if US Fed had been saying it all the while, and the last MPC, I think the RBI sort of gave an indication that it's time for them to also act. It's the timing which came as a surprise to many, but the act itself, people thought, should have been done anyway. To what extent could have varied. So, in a way, it was a synchronized action. Australia did it, US is going to do it, and that night US really did take the first measure. So I see a greater understanding among central banks nowadays. And obviously when they meet at the World Bank meet in Washington, there's a lot exchanged as well. But the understanding of how to handle recovery from pandemic is not therefore unique or typical for only India, it's a global issue. And even as we handle that recovery, inflation, which is really festering, and festering at some unbelievable highs in, let us say, the United States and in UK, not so much in India, but still the challenge of recovery versus inflation seems to be following a particular template which is across the globe.
So, Finance Minister, of course, all economic, I mean, there's no doubt that we do face economic issues because of, obviously caused by the supply chain challenges, the rising fuel prices and so on. But all challenges are relative. I mean, we've obviously seen what has happened in our neighboring countries where Forex, again, high fuel prices, high inflation, much higher than ours, depleting foreign exchange reserves have caused a problem similar to perhaps what we faced in the early 1990s, which led to economic reforms in India. Is that a worry for us, not of that, perhaps of that virulence, but some, some variant of that hitting us also? And was this discussed during when you were in the US for the fund bank meetings in late April?
In the context
in
of
the context
India,
of in the context of India as well.
India.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't discussed. Although, of course, the discussions pertain to the neighborhood, India's neighborhood. Some bilateral discussions pertained to that subject. But this is not a boast. I do want it to be put on record because you spoke about what were discussed in Washington. There was a great sense of admiration that we kept doing the reforms even during the pandemic. There was a very big sense of appreciation that India didn't allow its poor to suffer, particularly the way in which the food grains program has been handled. There was also a clear appreciation, and I take this opportunity to put this on record, clear appreciation that the Prime Minister literally led from the front and didn't give a feeling that the country is probably unsure of how to handle it. He was clear he was leading from the front. So these were clearly the kind of things which came up. And one more, but repeatedly a fact that I heard was India leading the way in terms of digital economy, the payment system, the way in which we could use during the pandemic, and that being done at a very cost-effective manner. These are issues which have come up. And the way in which we've adopted technology to make it simpler for income tax or GST have also become a topic of conversation. So these were there. No, on the contrary, no one did worry for India, saying, oh, Indian economy, probably. I didn't hear even a whisper.
Right. So, I mean, of course, you spent 10 days at the Fund Bank meeting in some sense, then you went to Germany after that with the Prime Minister. So it would be kind of hard selling the Indian economic story abroad. So what are your takeaways from those trips?
As I said, the recovery from COVID, even after IMF bringing down the global GDP growth, India remaining at the top as the fastest growing from among comparable economies, and also the fact that India is clearly, because of the various schemes, you may say so, but because of various reasons, India becoming now the hub for sourcing many things which were otherwise in one basket. There is a clear recognition, both in Germany and also in the various meetings that I had in the United States of America, that India's economy now has become the next best where investments are happening so that alternative sources for valuable input materials which are so required for the world is getting located. So that appreciation, and of course some of them linked it directly to the PLI which we've come up with. But the fact that India is a clear rule of law, democracy, and is English speaking, also accessible for all the developing economies and the developed economies, is now showing result. And also that we've placed now enough and more importance also on manufacturing. So the initial, not this visit, the last visit, questions on Atmanirbhar Bharat, whether it was inward looking, was not even there this time. So there is a clear understanding that Atmanirbhar didn't shut our doors. We are actually trying to strengthen ourselves. Of course, entertaining imports as well.
But so I'll come to PLI and the India emerging as a manufacturing hub in just a moment. But I just wanted to, on a macro question, because of what is again geopolitical developments, your subsidies, your fertilizer subsidies are going up, are shooting up. Your food subsidies are also shooting up. The PM Anna Yojana was extended recently till end September. So is there a chance of your fiscal maths going out of balance?
As regards the food program, we did understand that till such a time we are confident that the recovery and also show confidence that the poor are able to stand up for themselves and they can, be sure of earning their livelihood comfortably. We wanted the food program to be extended, for which of course the outer understanding of a limit is about 2 lakh 10 to 2.10 or 2.20 lakh crores. And in a way, mentally, I think that calculation has been in our minds, and even during the budget preparation, that was well in our consideration zone. The fertilizer thing, last year itself, not so much with expectation, but even unexpectedly took a very big chunk out of our budgetary provisions, and we had to bring in extra during the supplementary demands. This year, even as we went in, because of the way in which the crude was playing up, and because of the ways of the supply chain disruptions, as I said, commodities, we also had these 3 elements of inputs which go in for fertilizer production. So we were conscious that even this year we may have to give a bigger number for fertilizer subsidy, because the intention is not to move it on or burden the farmers with it. So to an extent we were prepared for an additional allocation both for the Anna Yojana and also for the fertilizers.
Right. So obviously, I suppose the biggest macro challenge right now is inflation. So the inevitable question which you're often asked, which is that, do you think there is a kind of fuel tax cut dampen inflation, and also kind of related, there is a GM looking at rejigging of GST rates. Is that on the anvil as an anti-inflationary measure?
No, first thing, I know theoretically and also observers of the economy would prefer me to tomorrow go to the GST Council and say, one rate and this is it, everything is in, petrol is in, everyone is happy. No, that's not happening. Let me be very clear. The committee headed by the Chief Minister is definitely going to have to submit its report. The terms of reference given to them and also the issues which have been periodically coming in the GST Council was to see how at least we go back to the revenue neutral levels at which GST was brought in. At least go back to that. And of course, rate rationalization has been a discussion point in over 3 or 4 GST Council. That also comes in. Wherever inversion prevails, we wanted to correct that because we can't afford to go on giving these refunds. And also it had a impact on the PLI scheme as well. Wherever inversion exists, there is this big thing about refunds to be collected. Investors were not keen to come into that. Cotton yarn is one of those classic examples. So there are calibrations with which the committee is looking at this matter. So it is not just a black and white question of the report comes from the committee and tomorrow I call a GST Council and that is only looking at hiking rates. No, sorry, I want the media to please absorb everything that I'm saying. It's not happening in the next meeting. The next meeting, obviously, let the report come. After that, I will have to circulate the report to all the ministers and post which we'll talk about it. So the ideal situation would be if I want to have these rationalization recommendations coming from the committee, post which the council takes it up to look at it. But I would think that committee's report itself, not before me, it's too much presumptuous for me to think it's going to happen in the next meeting.
What about a fuel tax cut?
What
It's
about
for the states. Well, I know. I mean, some of the states have done it, some of the states haven't done it. I presume you would like more states to do it, right?
the Honorable Prime Minister has commented on it.
So I just wanted to come to privatization. Obviously, this government has walked the talk. I mean, Air India was the big one. Pavan Hans has just been done. The LIC IPO is on. So where are we with regard to some of the other, companies that have been flagged? I mean, there are two public sector banks, one insurance company, BPCL, SCI. There is perhaps a perception that some of these have slowed down due to various reasons. Could be political, could be simply the logistics and so on. So do you plan to speed those up also?
I've been hearing this from 2019. Air India happened, the same question. Neelachal Ispat happened, the same question. Pavan Hans has happened. No takers for Pavan Hans for what? 4, 5 times. But that's also gone through. The question remains the same. Where are you on privatization? You keep asking, we'll keep doing.
To be more specific, what about the two public sector banks, which were the next two?
You keep asking.
Okay. So let me just come back to one more sort of macro-related question. I mean, we had our forex reserves. I mean, I'm just again raising it because of the current macro is quite high. It's close to 600 billion. But do you see a need to strengthen them further and to raise, as a macroeconomic target, the quantum of forex reserves in the economy? I mean, is there an ideal level that you have in mind?
No, but with the revenue coming from all the sources at which it is coming, and also with exports showing a very clear upward trajectory, and every month from this year is also very clearly indicative that at least the exports are going to be doing very well. Particularly the service sector is also showing clear signs of good buoyancy. So I think revenue generation, and also as a result your reserves going up, are all indications on which we don't keep a number and say we'll have to. Exports, of course, we'll keep a number saying at least reach that target. But RBI themselves have spoken about what kind of a reserves they can have. They can even probably plan for higher. So that confidence comes from the central bank. It's great. For us, the confidence level will have to be on how we are going to boost exports, how we can, get going with that, how agriculture can have the benefit of export, which is now clearly coming up. Farmers are also now choosing to sell it to the trader who will export it and give them better revenue rather than look at MSP. So all across the board, you're able to see people wanting to break that old-fashioned approach of, no, I've sold it to the nearby government agency. No, things are changing. There's a lot of reset happening. So for the government, I think we'll have to cash on the moment and make sure that we're able to build on a higher target for those. That naturally will result on better reserves indirectly, and for the central bank to feel confident that it can be even higher is showing that both the engines are going fine.
Right. May I also take this opportunity to welcome our Honorable Defence Minister, Rajnath Ji. We will be hearing from him soon. I think his sector is a major, a focus of the Atmanirbhar campaign, I think the defense sector, particularly in Russia. I'll also just come back to that in just a moment, but just to keep the thing going on exports. Exports are indeed have obviously recovered very smartly in the last fiscal after perhaps some stagnancy, and they're at an all-time high. But so are imports. Your monthly trade deficit is running at about 20 billion, at a 20 billion level. So, are we going to see more import curbs, more Atmanirbharta to reduce the quantum of the trade deficit?
I would want to take this opportunity to say the principles governing the taxation or duties being levied even with Atmanirbharta intact, is to make sure that the taxation is being levied on those items which are being produced in the country. We do not want to allow the doors to be open for those which are coming in at a predatory price, throwaway price for those goods which are being produced here, particularly those goods which are being produced by the MSMEs. Why would we want to ruin them by saying, no, no, I have to prove my sincerity about opening the economy and therefore I won't levy any duties? We've been item by item looking at those which have a production in the country, and it's only for them have we levied the duties. It's not blind application of duties. Let me reiterate, at every level, at my level, I have gone through every item which is being considered for reduction in duty or increase in duty or total removal of duty, item by item. So let me assure you that the levies of duties are very much to reinforce Atmanirbharta. Where we are producing, we will levy a duty. We don't want it coming in this country at lesser than the price at which we are producing, and if the quality is comparable. But it doesn't, meaning the duty doesn't get levied where very clearly we don't produce, but we need it as a raw material, so I get it cheap, I get it at affordable price. I will not be imprudent in levying a duty and say make it more costly when I need it so much and I don't have it in this country. So clearly, logic and principle of strengthening the Indian economy is what has governed us levying duties. Let's be clear on that.
Right. So let me ask you, where do we stand on cryptocurrencies right now? I mean, that must also be discussed. It's a favorite question which you keep getting asked, like privatization at most. But nonetheless, it's an interesting subject. Where do we stand now on cryptocurrencies? And was this also discussed at the fund bank meetings and this thing?
Absolutely. A lot of countries showed a lot of interest. There was IMF taking very clear interest in the subject. There's a lot of interest in multilateral institutions. OECD is also very keenly following the developments. G20 wants to know, particularly because from this December, it will be our country taking the chair in G20. They want to know what we will be doing on the crypto. We've had specific discussions on it. The FSB, which is under the G20, which is located in Switzerland, has also done a lot of work on crypto. That India has chosen to go through the route of the central bank driven digital currency is also well taken. In fact, openly at least 2 times, IMF and the World Bank authorities said India has taken this position to tax the crypto assets which are outside of the currency, which is the central bank, and they appreciated, because the concern in the IMF and the concern in the multilateral institution is that crypto should not, because there's not enough regulatory, because of the technology involved, because there is not enough regulatory mechanisms, should not end up violating those FATF norms, FATF being Financial Action for Terror Funding. There are very many keen observations being done about where money goes. Anti-money laundering is a very important thing on which they have attention. Similarly, money going for terror funding is also something which they are very worried about. They think digital currency, digital assets or digital transactions happening may lead to such funding, and they want the regulations to be taken up at a across the board kind of all countries together. So on the basis of tracking the money trail, India's step that we have gone forward taxing these transactions, crypto transactions, has been well received. They think it's out of the box. We've already started taking this step towards tracking the money. So actually on the crypto, the views that I'm hearing are very appreciative of what we have taken a step,
Right.
that the currency will be through the central bank, the others will be assets, and those assets, when they create transactional profits, will be taxable, has been well received everywhere.
So are we launching a digital currency this fiscal?
Sorry?
Are we launching a digital currency?
Well, I thought I said it in the budget speech.
Right.
I have said it in the budget speech.
Finance Minister, I just want to come to the issue of the sanctions which have been imposed on Russia. I mean, there are many aspects to the sanctions, but they are extremely wide-ranging. And one, which is, I think, to the best of my knowledge, has never been used, is, for example, that the Russian central bank's reserves, which are about, in fact, roughly the same as ours, coincidentally, about 600 billion, have essentially been impounded by the Western countries, in the sense that a large part of it has become unusable. Is there some thinking in India, in Indian government, at the level of the finance minister, central bank, not that, I mean, this is a kind of, I don't think we are going to invade any other country, but nonetheless, it's an unprecedented step. It's in some ways a weaponization of sanctions by the Western powers. And is there some thinking as to how to deal with it?
Well, we've been talking with countries in our bilaterals that there should be an immediate cessation of the war, and that it is only through dialogue and diplomacy that we can take the issue forward. And in matters related to our oil consumption and also buying it from the source, which gives us at a concessional rate, we've clearly exerted our right in doing that, because I'm also adding one more layer to this question, which I'm sure many of you leaders in the global businesses will understand. The possibility of the Indian basket, not just the Brent crude, Indian basket going up in its price itself is even more worrying, because if because of sanction, those in Europe who were depending on Russia will now come over to taking it from the Middle East because they can't take it from Russia. The quantum available for countries like India, which had nearly 80-85% of all that we import from the Middle East, will now become even more tightened because there are more buyers into the market. And even worse, the prices will go up. I'm competing against people who have suddenly come into the market who can ask for better, supply, give more money to buy it. So the sanction has actually resulted in people rushing to alternative sources, and where countries like India are there for decades now, suddenly is going to be crowded in with more people who want to buy the same thing. So supply and price factors will now have its own ramification on us. So the long and short of what sanction does to us is this one example, which I see in the near future also constraining us.
Right. But, sure. But I just wanted to, it's also obvious that the range of Western sanctions in Russia only, as the war goes on, is only going to get tighter. Now they are, they've obviously, the European Union might soon stop oil imports. They say they're going to phase out gas imports also by the end of this year. We also do a reasonable amount of trade in Russia. Over time, and I know the situation is dynamic and fluid, but will we essentially, what I'm asking is that will we fall in line with the Western sanctions, just as we did more or less when Western sanctions were imposed on Iran? Or, what is the thinking? What is the government's thinking? Are we going to sort of follow the sanctions in some way?
No, I think we have been spending a lot of time explaining India's position. Not just on the abstentions when votings took place, but also on the fact that if Russia is offering it to us at a discounted rate,
Right.
we will still be buying it because it makes perfect sense, particularly when the world is stressed out with inflation. The more the cost that you're paying for these imported commodities, the more that is going to influence your inflation levels. So we've been explaining that we will certainly purchase it. And it is not as if it is something which is being said for the first time. It is, well, very many countries in the West are still procuring it from Russia. Still procuring probably more than what they normally procured. So the idea of telling countries which are procuring 5% of what they totally consume to say you cut your 5% down, whereas I will increase my 85% to even 100, doesn't sell, doesn't go down well also. And even otherwise, I think we'll go ahead with what is good for the country. We need cheaper fuel. If it is available, why won't we want to buy it? We will buy it.
Okay, so thank you. So one more question which is not related to sanctions, is Rajnath ji is also here. One sort of key structural reform which did get shelved just before the elections are the farm laws. Are you thinking of bringing them back?
No, actually many things related to the farm laws are actually happening now. You can see it happening. Farmers are selling it for export. Farmers do not want to come for MSP because they find a better price somewhere else. Many states have already started seeing the benefits of liberating the farmer. And there is just no one stopping them from doing it. So, well, it's already there. In spirit, it's actually happening already, the 3 farm laws.
I was just wondering whether, whether someone from the audience would like to ask a question to the Finance Minister. Yeah, okay, there's a hand up, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
I'd just like to know your view on the NRI status of the NRIs who got stuck during COVID and couldn't travel. Is there any decision on that? Thank you.
NRI status of people who got stuck during...
NRI students or NRIs who got stuck in India?
Yeah.
Well, no, nothing in particular for me to say now.
About the tax, I was told that there was a decision.
I wish you had mentioned that.
Since they have you here...
I thought without that being said, I wanted to say, well, if your country is the country where you're residing is ready to receive you, welcome. You want to go, you go.
Yes.
But no, you wanted the tax.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Nothing before me.
Okay. We haven't taken a decision yet.
There's nothing before me.
Oh, I was told that it was put up by the Central Board of Direct Taxes.
Wow.
Not true?
Have they?
Okay, we will check. Thank you.
There's nothing before me. And if they're putting it up, let's see, definitely.
Okay. Okay, I think we are more or less out of we have time. Thank you for taking all these questions, Finance Minister. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think we now will hear from Rajnath ji. So let me ask Cyrus to take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that fascinating and frank discussion. Thank you, Bodhi. Nirmala ji, if I could request you to please remain on stage. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, sir. And now I'd also like to invite on stage Managing Director, Times Group, Mr. Vineet Jain. Thank you for being here, sir. It is our great privilege also to have with us the Honorable Defence Minister. It is because India is secure and safe that we can, in the truest sense of Atmanirbharta, mind our business. Ladies and gentlemen, give up your Josh for the Honorable Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh. Thank you for being here, sir. I would now like to request Mr. Vinny Jain to address this very special audience. Over to you, sir.
Honorable Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, winners of the ET Awards, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to welcome you back to the ET Awards. It has been more than 2 years since we gathered at the celebration of corporate excellence. 2 years that have tested the mettle of all of India, from the smallest kirana shop owner to the largest auto manufacturer. But today, as we meet in person, India's GDP growth is back on track. The stock market is up 20% in the last year. Corporate India has learned, adapted, and is in great form again. And if proof of robustness were required, it just came in the form of the highest ever GST collection in April. The ET Awards have always reflected the changing business landscape of India. And this year's winners are a great example of that. In a year during which health was the biggest concern of the country, 4 of our winners represent the healthcare and pharma sectors. Technology, which enabled some semblance of normal life during the worst phases of the pandemic, accounts for another 3 ET Award winners. At least some of the success of these winners is owed to the recipient of the Business Reformer of the Year award, the Honorable Finance Minister, who is with us today. The COVID crisis has provided an impetus to a range of structural reforms that will eventually show in higher growth. The implementation of the goods and services taxes has seen a steady improvement, and an overhaul of rates is under discussion. Company law is becoming what it should be, more supportive of business, as various sections have been decriminalized. The insolvency law is a steady work in progress. Resolutions to the code, along with measures of support, have pulled state-run banks out of the deepest NPA crisis. Banks are ready to drive growth again. Public expenditure has been used to support the economy when the pandemic hurt demand. The government budget is more transparent. Past subsidy dues have been cleared, and off-budget expenditure items have been accounted for in a transparent manner. Privatization has gathered momentum. Air India, the airline that no one thought could be privatized, has been sold. Pawan Hans was sold a few days back, and the LIC offer is open as we speak. The 6 lakh crore asset monetization plan does not look that big. Can anyone doubt the government's appetite for economic reforms? Another big reform, greater participation of the private sector in defense production, remains a priority. Given the escalating global supply chain uncertainties, the government's emphasis on Atmanirbharta or self-reliance in defense, as well as other sectors, now looks prescient. The economy has responded quickly to the measures, bouncing back 8.9% in FY22 and possibly 8% in the current fiscal. These measures will see us through what looks to be the next challenge of the century: geopolitical instability and war in Europe. Once again, India and the international community are facing runaway inflation, commodity shortages, and tangled supply chains. India's policymakers and businesses have shown resilience in dealing with the COVID pandemic, and I'm sure working together we will overcome these latest challenges. At the ET Awards, we celebrate success, but also look for inspiration for continued excellence. We have already heard from the Finance Minister, and we now look forward to hearing from Rajnath ji. Once again, let me thank you all for being here in person. Let us raise a collective toast to excellence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jain. And now I would like to invite Rajnath ji to deliver the keynote address. Thank you, sir.
Left hand side. राइट हैंड साइड खड़े होने की मुझे इजाजत नहीं दी है. Friends, I will deliver my speech in Hindi. Managing Director, Times Group, श्री विनीत जी जैन, कैबिनेट में मेरी कोलीग, मोस्ट डायनेमिक, प्रूवन डूअर, फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण, और इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स के सभी रेस्पेक्टेड अवार्डीज और इस सभागार में मौजूद मेरे सभी सम्मानित देवियों एवं सज्जनों, इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स द्वारा आयोजित इस इवेंट में इस अगस्त गैदरिंग को संबोधित करते हुए सचमुच मुझे बेहद खुशी हो रही है. और खासकर जब कोई विषय कॉमन मासेस से अथवा इंडिविजुअल से जुड़ा हुआ हो, तो ऐसे विषय पर इंटरेक्ट करने में हमारी एक विशेष रुचि रहती है. और आप सभी मेरी इस बात से जरूर सहमत होंगे. इकोनॉमी का इशू हर व्यक्ति के साथ जुड़ा हुआ है, लिंक्ड है. और आज मैं उसी विषय पर आप सबके सामने अपने विचार व्यक्त करूंगा. साथियों, आप सभी मेरी इस बात से भी सहमत होंगे कि आज हम सब एक नए, स्ट्रांग, सिक्योर और प्रॉस्परस इंडिया के निर्माण की ओर एक साथ आगे कदम बढ़ा रहे हैं. वैसे सामान्यतः मोटे तौर पर किसी राष्ट्र की ताकत के दो पिलर्स होते हैं, डिफेंस कैपेबिलिटीज और उसकी डोमेस्टिक इकोनॉमी की साइज. और ये दोनों ही उस राष्ट्र की ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेज की क्वालिटी और साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी इकोसिस्टम के साथ को रिलेटेड होते हैं. यानी ये आपस में एक दूसरे से लिंक्ड होते हैं. जाहिर है कि एक प्रॉस्परस कंट्री ही लॉन्ग रन में एडिक्वेट डिफेंस स्पेंडिंग को सपोर्ट कर सकता है. इतना ही नहीं, अपने ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेज की क्वालिटी को इंप्रूव कर सकता है और साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी इकोसिस्टम की फंडिंग भी कर सकता है. जबकि इसके साथ ही अगर हम यूक्रेनियन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को देखें तो हम इस नतीजे पर पहुंचेंगे कि किसी राष्ट्र को जब वास्तविक रूप से युद्ध का सामना करना पड़ता है तो इसकी सुरक्षा के लिए स्ट्रांग डिफेंस कैपेबिलिटीज यह अनिवार्य हो जाती है. ऐसे में हमने अपने डिफेंस और इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को एक मंच पर लाने का काम किया है. फिर से मैं इसे दोहराना चाहूंगा, ऐसे में हम अपने डिफेंस और इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को एक मंच पर लाने का काम किया है. ठीक उसी तरह जैसे डिफेंस मिनिस्टर और फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर को आपने एक मंच पर लाने का काम किया है. और साथियों, हमारी डिफेंस कैपेबिलिटीज को मजबूत करने के लिए सरकार द्वारा किए गए जितने भी उपाय हैं किस तरह हमारी इकॉनमी को मजबूती दे सकते हैं, इसकी एक झलक मैं आपके सामने रखना चाहूंगा। हमारी डोमेस्टिक इंडस्ट्री की भागीदारी डोमेस्टिक सेक्टर में अधिक से अधिक हो, इसके लिए सरकार ने डिफेंस के कैपिटल एक्विजिशन का एक निश्चित हिस्सा डोमेस्टिक प्रोक्योरमेंट के लिए रिजर्व कर दिया है। इस वर्ष यानी 2022-2023 के लिए यह 64% यानी लगभग 85,000 करोड़ कर दिया गया है। और फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर यहां मजबूत हैं, मैं जानता हूं यदि इसमें कमी होगी इसको 1 लाख करोड़ रुपए भी कर सकती है। और इसका भी 25% डोमेस्टिक प्राइवेट इंडस्ट्री के लिए भी हमारी गवर्नमेंट ने इसे रिजर्व कर दिया है। और इंडियनाइजेशन के इसी क्रम को आगे बढ़ाते हुए हमारे मंत्रालय ने अब तक 3 पॉजिटिव इंडियनाइजेशन लिस्ट जारी की है, जिसमें कि 310 आइटम्स है कि हम किसी भी सूरत में एक निश्चित समय के बाद दुनिया के दूसरे देशों से हम इंपोर्ट नहीं करेंगे। ऐसे 310 आइटम्स की लिस्ट हमने जारी की है। और आपको जानकर यह खुशी होगी कि पहली और दूसरी इंडियनाइजेशन लिस्ट के आधार पर अब तक मोर देन 54,000 करोड़ रुपए का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किया जा चुका है और 4.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए का ऑर्डर अगले 5 से लेकर 7 वर्षों में दिए जाने की पूरी संभावना है। और सरकार ने डिफेंस रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट बजट का 1/4 पार्ट इंडस्ट्री लेड रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट को डेडिकेट करने का फैसला लिया है। और ऐसे कदम प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स को डिफेंस सेक्टर में आने के लिए इनकरेज कर रहे हैं। और इसके अतिरिक्त डिफेंस सेक्टर में फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट को भी बढ़ाया गया है। पहले यह यहां पर 49% हुआ करता था, अब उसे ऑटोमेटिक रूट से 74% और गवर्नमेंट रूट के द्वारा उसे 100% कर दिया गया। और इस कदम से जहां फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर इंडिया में इन्वेस्टमेंट करने के लिए इनकरेज्ड होंगे, इंडिया में एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेशन भी होगा, वहीं डिफेंस से जुड़ी क्रिटिकल टेक्नोलॉजी प्राप्त करने का रास्ता भी भारत के लिए काफी आसान हो जाएगा। साथियों, डीआरडीओ द्वारा इंडस्ट्रीज को फ्री ऑफ कास्ट टेक्नोलॉजी उपलब्ध कराई जा रही है। फ्री ऑफ कास्ट टेक्नोलॉजी इस समय उपलब्ध कराई जा रही है और इससे इंडस्ट्री को आसानी से टेक्नोलॉजी एक्सेस मिल रहा है। ऑर्डिनेंस फैक्ट्री बोर्ड को कॉर्पोरेटाइज किया है। 7 डीपीएसयू बनाए गए हैं, डिफेंस पब्लिक सेक्टर अंडरटेकिंग्स। और आज मुझे आप सबको बतलाते हुए जानकारी हो रही है जो हमने 7 डीपीएसयू ऑर्डिनेंस फैक्ट्री को कॉर्पोरेटाइज करने के बाद बनाए हैं, उसमें से 6 हमारे डीपीएसयू इस समय प्रॉफिट में आ गए और इन सभी पीएसयूज में नई ऊर्जा, उत्साह और जवाबदेही के साथ तेजी के साथ काम हो रहा है। इसी तरह अनेक कदम सरकार ने उठाए हैं जो सरकार की है। आर्म्ड फोर्सेस, हमारी इंडस्ट्री, हमारे स्टार्टअप्स और इनोवेटर्स सभी के लिए एक विन विन सिचुएशन वो क्रिएट करते हैं। अभी हाल ही में मैंने इनोवेशन फॉर डिफेंस एक्सलेंस यानी आईडेक्स के एक नए एडिशन आईडेक्स प्राइम को लॉन्च किया है और इनोवेटर्स और स्टार्टअप्स को प्रोत्साहित करने के लिए यह डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री का एक नया कदम है। और इसमें डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री हमारे तीनों सर्विसेज, आर्मी, नेवी और एयरफोर्स, तीनों सर्विसेज, इंडियन कोस्ट गार्ड, डिफेंस पीएसयूज के प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट्स आम जनता के सामने सॉल्यूशन के लिए यह जारी करता है। और इसमें सिलेक्ट किए गए प्रोजेक्ट्स की सरकार हैंड होल्डिंग करती है और साथ ही उसकी फंडिंग भी करती है। और इसमें दिए जाने वाले ग्रांट का अमाउंट जो कि अब तक 1.50 करोड़, 1.5 करोड़ रुपये हुआ करता था, उसे बढ़ाकर हमने 10 करोड़ कर दिया है। और यह हमारे इनोवेटर्स और स्टार्टअप्स की मेहनत और लगन के प्रति सरकार का कितना सपोर्ट है, इस कदम से यह साफ जाहिर हो जाता है। साथियों, आप में शायद कुछ ही लोगों को इस बात की जानकारी होगी कि डिफेंस प्रोक्योरमेंट के लिए एक इंपॉर्टेंट कैटेगरी मेक प्रोसीजर है, जिसमें 2 सब कैटेगरीज हैं। पहली सब कैटेगरी मेक 1 है। इसके अंतर्गत आने वाले जो प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, इन प्रोजेक्ट्स की 90% तक की डेवलपमेंट फंडिंग सरकार वेंडर्स को फेज्ड मैनर में करती है। और इसी तरह मेक 2 के अंतर्गत इंडस्ट्री द्वारा इक्विपमेंट, माइनर प्लेटफॉर्म्स, सिस्टम्स, सबसिस्टम्स, कंपोनेंट्स, पार्ट्स और अपग्रेड्स आदि का भी डेवलपमेंट आता है। इंपोर्ट्स सब्स्टिट्यूशन इस कैटेगरी के अंतर्गत आने वाले प्रोजेक्ट्स का एक की फोकस है। डिफेंस मिनिस्टर के रूप में मैं विभिन्न मंचों पर इन डिफेंस इंडिजिनाइजेशन रिलेटेड मुद्दों पर अपनी बातें सामान्यतः रखता रहा हूं, पर आज आप लोगों के सामने मैं कुछ अलग बातें रखने का प्रयास करूंगा। मैं प्रयास करूंगा कि इंडियन इकोनॉमी की जिस तस्वीर को मैं देखता हूं और जिस तरह से उसे मैं समझता हूं, उसे आपके सामने मैं प्रस्तुत करूं। मैं कोई इकोनॉमिस्ट या इस फील्ड का स्कॉलर तो नहीं रहा हूं, फिर भी एक इंडियन सिटीजन होने के और इंडियन इकोनॉमी के सामान्य ऑब्जर्वर के रूप में मैं अपनी कुछ बातें आपके सामने रखना चाहूंगा। आप लोगों के सामने मैं अपने विचार रखूं, उससे पहले मैं इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स को इस महत्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रम में मुझे आमंत्रित करने के लिए मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं। इंडियन बिजनेस डेलीज में लार्जेस्ट प्रिंट रीडरशिप के साथ इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स हमारे देश में बिजनेस फोकस्ड न्यूज की सबसे महत्वपूर्ण मीडिया में से एक है। इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स ने आम जनता के लिए इंफॉर्मेशन एक्सेस प्राप्त करना आसान किया है। बिजनेस और इकोनॉमी से जुड़े मुद्दों को लोगों के बीच ले जाने और समझाने की दिशा में भी आपने काफी कुछ काम किया है, बल्कि मैं कहना चाहूंगा शायद सबसे ज्यादा किया है। साथियों, सरकार की इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसीज और उसके बेनिफिट्स का लोग कई बार फौरी तौर पर आकलन नहीं कर पाते हैं। इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स ने इस संबंध में हमारे नागरिकों को प्रॉपर फैक्ट्स और एनालिसिस उपलब्ध कराकर इस तरह के आकलन में उनकी मदद की है। ट्रस्टवर्दी फैक्चुअल रिपोर्टिंग और इनसाइटफुल एनालिसिस द इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स के पेजेज की यह खासियत है। और मैं तो कहना चाहता हूं, पॉलिटिकल न्यूज के लिए भी अब लोग इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स के पन्नों को पलटते हैं। एक विशेष बात जो मैं इसके संबंध में कह सकता हूं कि इस इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स ने अपने रीडर्स को कैपिटल मार्केट समेत फाइनेंशियल और बिजनेस इकोसिस्टम में एक्टिव पार्टिसिपेंट बनने में मदद की है। कैपिटल मार्केट्स के बढ़ते रिटेल इन्वेस्टर बेस ने हमारे कैपिटल मार्केट्स को डेप्थ और रेजिलियंस प्रदान किया है। और इस प्रकार इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स ने समाज के लिए इनॉर्मस इकोनॉमिक वैल्यू क्रिएट की है। क्योंकि जर्नलिज्म को फर्स्ट रफ ड्राफ्ट ऑफ हिस्ट्री कहा जाता है, इस तौर पर देखा जाए तो इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स हमारे समय का एक गजेटियर भी है। आज हमारे देश समाज में जो कुछ भी हो रहा है, इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स के पन्नों पर वह लंबे समय के लिए दर्ज होता जा रहा है। और इसे मैं केवल एक बंच ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन के तौर पर ही नहीं देखता हूं, बल्कि आम जन को जानकारी देते हुए और विश्लेषण करना सिखाते हुए एक टीचर के तौर पर भी मैं इसे देखता हूं। मेरी शुभकामनाएं हैं कि इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स अपनी इस भूमिका के निर्वहन में लगातार आगे बढ़ता रहे। कहा जाता है कि विद ग्रेट पावर कम्स ग्रेट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी। मुझे पूरी आशा और विश्वास है कि इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स अपनी सामाजिक जिम्मेदारियों पर आगे भी पूरी तरह इसी तरीके से खरा उतरेगा। मित्रों, आज दिए जा रहे पुरस्कार उन लोगों और उन संस्थाओं के कंट्रीब्यूशंस के को रिकॉग्निशन देते हैं जिन्होंने मानवता की बेहतरी के लिए कार्य किया है। इनमें से मैं यहां कुछ कंट्रीब्यूटर्स का बहुत ही ब्रीफली मेंशन करना चाहूंगा। इन्फोसिस ने अपने इनोवेटिव क्लाउड बेस्ड स्ट्रेटजी के बल पर पैंडेमिक जैसी सिचुएशन में भी हाई ग्रोथ हासिल की है। और आधार पूनावाला ने कोविड वैक्सीन प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी को तेजी से बढ़ाया, जिसका भारत के साथ साथ कई अन्य देशों के वैक्सीनेशन ट्रैजेक्टरी पर व्यापक प्रभाव पड़ा है। श्री प्रताप रेड्डी ने अपोलो हॉस्पिटल के माध्यम से भारत में प्राइवेट सेक्टर हेल्थ केयर पैराडाइम को बदल दिया। और सुश्री समीना हामिद ने सिप्ला को तेजी से विकास के पथ पर आगे बढ़ाया है। और लारस लैब्स आज भारत में बेहतरीन एक्टिव फार्मास्यूटिकल इनग्रेडिएंट्स कंपनीज में से एक बन गई है, एपीआई कंपनी जिसे कहते हैं। और श्री गिरीश मातृभूतम ने आज से 11 साल पहले फ्रेश वर्क्स नाम से एक छोटी सी कंपनी की शुरुआत की थी, जो मुझे जानकारी दी गई है। और आज यह कंपनी 13 ग्लोबल लोकेशन पर मोर देन 50,000 बिजनेसेस को सॉफ्टवेयर सॉल्यूशंस देने का काम कर रही है। यह नेस्डैक की लिस्ट में शामिल होने वाला भारत का पहला सॉफ्टवेयर एज ए सर्विस स्टार्टअप है। मुझे यह जानकर बेहद खुशी हुई है, इस कंपनी के लगभग 2/3 एम्प्लॉइज इसके स्टॉक ऑप्शन से लाभान्वित हो रहे हैं, बेनिफिटेड हैं एम्प्लॉइज। और साथियों, वहीं HCL 2011 में स्थापित अपनी CSR आर्म HCL फाउंडेशन के माध्यम से अपने डेवलपमेंट एजेंडा को भी वो लगातार आगे बढ़ा रहा है। श्री पुनीत रंजन CEO डेलाइट ने कोविड की दूसरी लहर के दौरान US MNCs के साथ मिलकर भारत को क्रिटिकल इक्विपमेंट प्रदान करने का एक बहुत ही अच्छा अवसर दिया है। फ्रेंड्स, a round of applause for these awardees. आप ये कहेंगे कि आपने अपने कोलीग की तो किया ही नहीं, वो भी अवार्डी है। अपने कोलीग की ज्यादा प्रशंसा नहीं करनी चाहिए। साथियों, इन सभी अवार्डीज के बीच मुझे एक कॉमन थ्रेड दिखाई देता है, जिससे सभी जुड़े हुए हैं। और आप सभी परिचित होंगे कि हमारे यहां कहा गया है, सर्वजन हिताय सर्वजन सुखाय, सभी का हित हो, सभी को सुख की प्राप्ति हो। यह हमारी एक बहुत पुरानी एक भारतीय अवधारणा है, और यही हमारी भारतीय संस्कृति की सबसे बड़ी विशेषता है। और शायद इसी कारण ही हमारे देश के रहने वाले ऋषियों और मनीषियों ने भारत की सीमा में ही रहने वाले लोगों को अपने परिवार का सदस्य नहीं माना है, बल्कि पूरे विश्व की धरा पर रहने वाले लोगों को अपने परिवार का सदस्य मानते हुए वसुधैव कुटुंबकम का संदेश सारे विश्व को दुनिया की किसी एक देश की धरती से गया है तो केवल और केवल हमारे और आपके देश भारत की धरती से गया है। द होल वर्ल्ड इज फैमिली। और यही हमारे ऋषियों और मनीषियों द्वारा दिया गया अनमोल ज्ञान, जो हमारे वेदों में संगच्छध्वम संबद्धध्वम, बोधिसत्व जी कहां हैं? तो समझते होंगे, यानी हम सब एक साथ चलें, एक साथ बढ़ें। बोधिसत्व नाम है उनका, इसलिए मैंने कहा इस रूप में यह उपस्थित है। आगे चलकर उपनिषद में सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः की प्रार्थना के रूप में हमारे सामने आते हैं। मध्यम मार्ग, जो कि दुनिया को भारत की एक अनमोल देन है, महात्मा बुद्ध के समय से ही हमारे नेशनल साइकी का यह हिस्सा रहा है। उसके मूल में भी यही भावना विद्यमान है। सबके कल्याण की यही भावना महात्मा गांधी के सर्वोदय और अंत्योदय के सिद्धांत में भी स्पष्ट रूप से दिखाई देती है। हमारे विजनरी प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री नरेंद्र मोदी द्वारा दिया गया कंसेप्ट उनका था सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, सबका प्रयास। लेकिन यहां पर हम उसमें सबका विकास के लिए सबका प्रयास की बात को अलग करके कहना चाहता हूं। वही जो हमारी प्राचीन भावना है, उसी का एक एक्सटेंडेड स्वरूप है। मैं देख पा रहा हूं कि आज के अवार्डी भी उसी भावना को जनहित में साकार करने का अपनी तरफ से भरपूर प्रयास कर रहे हैं। इन सब बातों का जिक्र कर मैं कहना क्या चाहता हूं साथियों, मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि इन अवार्डीज ने अपनी मेहनत, अपनी लगन के बल पर अपने आप को तो संपन्न किया ही है, अपने आप को रिच तो बनाया ही है, साथ ही समाज के कल्याण के लिए भी उन्होंने बहुत बड़ा काम किया है। सामान्य तौर पर क्या माना जाता है कि इंडिविजुअल लेवल पर जो चीजें फायदेमंद हों, जरूरी नहीं है कि सोशल लेवल पर भी वही फायदेमंद हो। यानी समाज में एक व्यक्ति यदि केवल अपना ही कल्याण देखने लगेगा समस्त धन, संसाधन और ऊर्जा का उपयोग केवल अपने लिए ही करने लगेगा तो बाकी लोगों के लिए क्या बचेगा? आप सभी महात्मा गांधी के उस कथन से जरूर अवगत होंगे जिसमें वह कहते हैं, अर्थ प्रोवाइड्स इनफ टू सेटिस्फाई एवरी मैन्स नीड बट नॉट एवरी मैन्स ग्रीड। अगर हर व्यक्ति केवल अपना स्वार्थ देखने लग जाए तो समाज और में अराजकता आने में देर नहीं लगेगी और थोड़े समय के बाद इस दुष्परिणाम इंडिविजुअल लेवल पर भी दिखाई देने लगेगा, जहां से स्वार्थ की शुरुआत हुई थी। इसे मैं एक और छोटे से उदाहरण से आप लोगों के सामने स्पष्ट करना चाहूंगा। जब कोई इंसान रोड पर लाल बत्ती जंप करता है तो उसे एक क्षण के लिए लग सकता है कि उसने अपने रास्ते में लगने वाला समय बचा लिया। वैसे मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि आप लोग ऐसा नहीं करते हैं। रात के टाइम भले ही सड़कें खाली रहती हों, सड़कें सुनी सानी रहती हों, फिर भी आप ऐसा नहीं करते होंगे। मैं देख रहा हूं सब लोग ने मान लिया कि नहीं करते हैं ऐसा, लेकिन जरूर कुछ ना कुछ लोग ऐसे होंगे, ये सड़कें यदि खाली रहती होंगी तो सड़क रेड लाइट जलती होगी तभी सड़क क्रॉस करते हैं। खैर, मैं कह रहा था, अगर कोई व्यक्ति शॉर्ट टर्म बेनिफिट के बारे में सोच रहा है तो ट्रैफिक लाइट जंप करना उसे ठीक लग सकता है, लेकिन लॉन्ग टर्म बेनिफिट पर विचार किया जाए तो यह बिल्कुल भी सही नहीं लगेगा। यदि ट्रैफिक लाइट्स का सम्मान नहीं किया जाता है तो भारी ट्रैफिक जैम्स होने लगेंगे और इंडिविजुअल लेवल पर भी रास्ते में लगने वाले समय में निश्चित ही बढ़ोतरी होगी। यही बात हमारे बिजनेस पर भी पूरी तरह से लागू होती है। शॉर्ट टर्म प्रॉफिट वाले रास्ते कभी भी लॉन्ग टर्म प्रॉफिट नहीं ला सकते। और साथियों, अगर आप कोई कंपनी चला रहे हैं तो आप केवल कंपनी का ही इंटरेस्ट नहीं देखते हैं, बल्कि अपने एम्प्लॉइज का भी आप पूरा ख्याल रखते हैं, क्योंकि अंततः कंपनी उन्हीं से मिलकर बनी है और उनके हितों के साथ खिलवाड़ करने का सीधा मतलब है अपनी कंपनी के फ्यूचर के साथ खिलवाड़ करना। और मैं किसी का नाम तो नहीं लूंगा, लेकिन आपको ऐसे कई उदाहरण आपके आसपास मिल जाएंगे जिन्होंने अपने शॉर्ट टर्म फायदे के लिए लॉन्ग टर्म फायदे की बलि चढ़ाई है। इसी तरह मानिए कोई अपनी छोटी सी दुकान चला रहा है, अगर वह अपने छोटे फायदे के लिए कस्टमर्स को महंगा सामान बेचने लगे या सामान की क्वालिटी में कंप्रोमाइज करने लगे तो उसके कस्टमर्स कितने दिनों तक टिकेंगे? काठ की हांडी बार बार नहीं चढ़ेगी, कितनी बार चढ़ेगी? ऐसे में होता यह है कि शॉपकीपर कुछ टाइम तक भले ही अपनी कमाई कर ले, पर जो एक विश्वास का संकट पैदा होता है, यानी एक क्राइसिस ऑफ क्रेडिबिलिटी जो पैदा होती है, उसकी भरपाई लंबे समय तक नहीं हो पाती है। यह भी हो सकता है यह भरपाई कभी भी ना हो। और यह बात जीवन के हर क्षेत्र में लागू होती है, चाहे वह व्यक्तिगत जीवन हो या फिर व्यवसाय हो या राजनीति हो। इसलिए हमें हर कीमत पर अपनी क्रेडिबिलिटी बनाए रखने की आवश्यकता है। किसी भी सूरत में हमारी जिंदगी में क्राइसिस ऑफ क्रेडिबिलिटी न पैदा होने पाए, विश्वास का संकट न पैदा होने पाए, इस संबंध में सजग रहने की आवश्यकता है। इकोनॉमिक लेवल पर, इकोनॉमी के लेवल पर भी मैं साथियों, अगर हम मार्केट बेस्ड इकोनॉमी बना रहे हैं तो हमें पूरा ध्यान रखना होगा उसमें मार्केट फोर्सेस को जरूरी इंडिपेंडेंस यानी स्वतंत्रता हासिल हो और वे अपने अनुरूप अपना व्यवसाय चला सकें और वेल्थ क्रिएट कर सकें। पर हमें यह भी देखना होगा कि वह फोर्सेज कुछ सामाजिक नियमों का पालन करें। ऐसा न हो कि उनकी कंपनी का शेयर तो लगातार ग्रीन होकर ऊपर उठता जाए, पर उनकी फैक्ट्री से निकलने वाला धुआं, स्मोक, इन्वायरमेंट की ग्रीनरी को पूरी तरह से नष्ट कर दे, या फिर उनकी फैक्ट्री ग्राउंड वाटर को खत्म किए जा रही हो, या फिर वह ऐसे प्रोडक्ट बना रहे हों जो हमारे समाज और यूथ के लिए बहुत ही हार्मफुल हों। इस स्थिति में भी मार्केट फोर्सेस का मुनाफा भले ही लगातार बनता और बढ़ता जा रहा हो, पर सामाजिक तौर पर जो नुकसान होगा उसकी भरपाई वह कभी भी संभव नहीं हो पाएगी। यानी हम न केवल इकोनॉमिक एक्टर्स के फ्री प्ले को बल्कि फेयर प्ले को भी प्रोत्साहित करें। इसलिए हमें बदलते समय के साथ ही नए नियमों और कानूनों की भी जरूरत है, जिसे आप लोगों की भाषा में रेगुलेशन कहा जाता है। हालांकि जब मैं रेगुलेशन की बात करता हूं तो मैं यह भी समझता हूं कि यह किसी दुधारी तलवार से कम नहीं है। यानी एक ओर यह रेगुलेशंस तमाम रेस्ट्रिक्शंस लगाकर सोशल इंटरेस्ट, सामाजिक हित इंश्योर कर सकती हैं, तो दूसरी ओर इंटरप्रेन्योरशिप की प्रबल संभावनाओं, जिसे आप लोग एनिमल स्पिरिट्स कहते हैं, को भी अनावश्यक रूप से इंपैक्ट कर सकती हैं। एनिमल स्पिरिट का यहां मैंने प्रयोग किया है जुझारूपन। इसलिए रेगुलेशन को बिजनेस और सोसाइटी दोनों के इंटरेस्ट को ध्यान में रखकर ही इन्फोर्स किया जाना चाहिए। और साथियों, कोई भी ऐसा रेगुलेशन जो बहुत आवश्यक नहीं है वह ओवर रेगुलेशन बन जाता है, जो मार्केट फोर्सेस के स्वतंत्रतापूर्वक काम करने में बाधा बनता है, और इससे इनएफिशिएंसी आती हैं और वैल्यू डिस्ट्रक्शन होता है। जिसे दवा का काम करना चाहिए वह रोग से भी बदतर हो जाता है। और वर्तमान में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय परिस्थितियों ने काफी चैलेंजेस साथियों हम लोगों के सामने प्रस्तुत किए हैं, और इस इंटरकनेक्टेड वर्ल्ड में हमारा देश भला इन बदलावों से कैसे अछूता रह सकता था। यूक्रेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट के चलते पूरी दुनिया में फूड एंड फ्यूल की कीमतें बढ़ी हैं, और इसका असर अन्य देशों के साथ साथ भारत पर भी पड़ा है। भारत पर हाइड्रोकार्बन और ऑयल सीड्स की कीमतों पर विशेष प्रभाव डाला है, जो बहुत लगातार बढ़ती जा रही है। ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन और अन्य लॉजिस्टिकल बॉटलनेक्स ने कोर इन्फ्लेशन को बढ़ाया है। और फ्रेंड्स, कोविड-19 के कारण हुई डिस्टर्बेंसेस और अनसर्टेनिटीज ने प्राइवेट कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर को उस गति से रिकवर नहीं होने दिया जितना उसे होना चाहिए था। कॉन्टैक्ट बेस्ड सर्विसेज जैसे होटल्स, ट्रांसपोर्ट आदि की ग्रोथ पहले के कंपैरिजन में अभी भी कुछ धीमी है। साथ ही हमारे ऊपर से कोविड का खतरा भी पूरी तरह से टला नहीं है। फिर भी सरकार ने अपने प्रयासों से इसे काफी हद तक रोकने में भी कामयाबी हासिल की है, और इसके लिए मैं विशेष रूप से अपने फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण जी को बधाई देना चाहता हूं, इनके एफर्ट्स को। और अभी जिन चुनौतियों का उल्लेख मैंने किया उनमें से एक बात बड़ी कॉमन है, जो मुझे यकीन है कि आप सब ने भी जरूर नोटिस किया होगा। इनमें से कोई भी समस्या हमारी सोसाइटी और गवर्नमेंट ने पैदा नहीं की, बल्कि ये समस्याएं ऐसी ताकतों के द्वारा हमारे बीच आई जो हमारे नियंत्रण के बाहर हैं। पर साथियों, अगर इन समस्याओं का नियंत्रण हमारे हाथ में नहीं है तो हाथ पर हाथ धरकर बैठना भी यह हम लोगों के स्वभाव में नहीं है, हमारे गवर्नमेंट के स्वभाव में नहीं है, हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर के स्वभाव में नहीं है। और जिस इंडियन सिविलाइजेशन ने हमारे हजारों वर्षों के इतिहास में इतने उतार चढ़ाव देखे, वह भला इन संकटों के समय कैसे अपनी हिम्मत हार सकती थी। हमारी जनता की फाइटिंग स्पिरिट इस पीरियड में पहले से कहीं अधिक उभर कर दुनिया के सामने आई, और जिसका परिणाम आप लोग प्रत्यक्ष रूप से देख सकते हैं। जीडीपी ग्रोथ को लेकर डोमेस्टिक और फॉरेन एजेंसी द्वारा शॉर्ट टर्म और मीडियम टर्म में अनेक प्रेडिक्शंस किए गए हैं। मैं उनके एग्जैक्ट नंबर्स पर तो नहीं जाऊंगा, हालांकि जैसा आप सभी ने अनुभव भी किया होगा कि एक कंसेंसस लोगों में देखी जा सकती है। भारत दुनिया में फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग मेजर इकोनॉमीज में से एक है, और लगातार भारत आगे बढ़ रहा है। एक्सपोर्ट नंबर्स सारे रिकॉर्ड तोड़ रहे हैं, और ट्रेंड के ऊपर उठने की ही संभावना भविष्य में भी दिखाई देती है। साथियों, इनकम टैक्स हो या जीएसटी का कलेक्शन हमारी उम्मीदों से भी परे है। जितनी हमने कल्पना नहीं की थी उससे अधिक कलेक्शन हो रहा है। ग्लोबल और डोमेस्टिक स्तर पर कैपेसिटी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स के साथ यह उम्मीद की जाती है कि सप्लाई चेन प्रेशर्स में कमी आएगी। और मित्रों, पीएम गतिशक्ति लॉजिस्टिकल बॉटलनेक्स के लिए हमारा लॉन्ग टर्म रिस्पांस है, और इस मास्टर प्लान को एग्जीक्यूट करने के लिए 100 लाख करोड़ रुपए का खर्च इनविजन किया गया है। रोड्स, रेलवेज, एयरपोर्ट्स, पोर्ट्स और शिपिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का निर्माण सरकार की टॉप प्रायोरिटीज में से एक है। और किसानों को डायरेक्ट इनकम सपोर्ट, डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर, प्राइम मिनिस्टर किसान और ऐसी अन्य अनेक योजनाओं का उद्देश्य प्राइवेट कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर को उस स्थिति में वापस लाना है जहां हम पैंडेमिक के आने के पहले थे, बल्कि हम उससे भी आगे जाना चाहते हैं। इन सभी प्रयासों के चलते हमारी डोमेस्टिक डिमांड, चाहे वह इन्वेस्टमेंट से संबंधित हो या कंजम्पशन से संबंधित हो, उस पर तेजी से बढ़ोतरी हो रही है। और हमने पैंडेमिक के बाद वी शेप रिकवरी की है, इसे हर इकोनॉमिस्ट स्वीकार करेगा। और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर और लॉजिस्टिक्स पर रिन्यूड फोकस होने के कारण सप्लाई साइड में भी जो बाधाएं आई हैं वह भी ईज होती हुई अब दिखाई दे रही हैं। साथियों, मैंने आप लोगों के सामने इंडियन इकोनॉमी की वर्तमान स्थिति और उसके सही दिशा में आगे बढ़ने की गति के बारे में चर्चा की है। हमारे उत्तर प्रदेश में एक पुरानी कहावत है, बंसी का बखान करूं कि बंसी के बजैया का। पता नहीं आप समझ पाए हुए कि नहीं। बंसी मैं कह रहा हूं बैम्बू फ्लूट। इस कहावत का मतलब यह है कि बैम्बू फ्लूट बजाने वाले की मैं तारीफ करूं कि बैम्बू की तारीफ करूं। जाहिर है कि बखान इस बैम्बू फ्लूट को बजाने वाले का होना चाहिए। बैम्बू फ्लूट की बड़ाई नहीं होनी चाहिए, उसकी प्रशंसा नहीं की जानी चाहिए। यदि इकॉनमी सही दिशा में आगे बढ़ रही है तो इसकी डायरेक्टर हमारी प्रशंसा की पात्र है। अब कौन डायरेक्टर है इसका, अब आप लोग समझ सकते हैं। और खास तौर पर जब डायरेक्टर पीपीपी टर्म्स में दुनिया की थर्ड लार्जेस्ट इकॉनमी का संचालन कर रही हो और उस डायरेक्टर ने आंख बंद कर रखी है मैं डायस पर। ऐसे में इस शाम अन्य अवार्डीज के साथ साथ हमारे सामने लास्ट और द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट अवार्डी भी है, द बिजनेस रिफॉर्मर ऑफ द ईयर श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण, द फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया। और यह अवार्ड मैं समझता हूं उनके लिए काफी उपयुक्त है। साथियों, आप फाइनेंस एंड कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स मिनिस्टर भी हैं। अब मैं एक मिनिस्ट्रियल कोलीग के रूप में और साथ ही एक इंडियन सिटीजन के दृष्टिकोण से उनके परफॉर्मेंस पर कुछ बातें आपके सामने रखना चाहूंगा। वैसे इनके परफॉर्मेंस को एसेस करना ये हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं है, ये तो आप लोग करेंगे, लेकिन फिर भी एक कोलीग होने के नाते मैं उस पर कुछ बातें रखना चाहूंगा। वैसे तो इन दो इंपॉर्टेंट मिनिस्ट्रीज में उनकी परफॉर्मेंस के फुल असेसमेंट के लिए एक पूरी बुक लिखी जा सकती है या इससे ज्यादा भी कुछ किया जा सकता है। इसलिए मैं केवल कुछ उदाहरण आपके सामने रखना चाहूंगा जो इंडियन इकोनॉमी में उनके मैसिव कंट्रीब्यूशन को हाईलाइट करते हैं। पॉलिटिक्स में आने से पहले उनकी एकेडमिक क्रेडेंशियल्स और प्रोफेशनल एक्सपीरियंस फॉर्मिडेबल रहे हैं। फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर के रूप में वो 5 डिपार्टमेंट्स की इस समय देखरेख कर रही हैं, 5 डिपार्टमेंट चला रही हैं। इनमें राजस्व महकमा, जिसे रेवेन्यू कहते हैं, रेवेन्यू डिपार्टमेंट ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट डिपार्टमेंट है। और हमारे यहां यह कहा गया है कोष मूलो दंड है, जिसका अर्थ होता है कोष या खजाना राज्य की शक्ति की सबसे बड़ी ताकत होती है, राज्य की शक्ति का वह आधार होता है। और आप देखिए कि ऐसे कठिन समय में भी टैक्सेस का, वह चाहे जीएसटी हो अथवा इनकम टैक्स हो, रिकॉर्ड कलेक्शन हमारे सामने है। क्रेडिट गोज टू फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर एंड द प्राइम मिनिस्टर। दूसरा महत्वपूर्ण महकमा है एक्सपेंडिचर का। इसमें भी कई बातें ध्यान में रखनी होती हैं। एक तरफ से यह देखना होता है कि डिफेंस, हेल्थ, एजुकेशन, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, सोशल वेलफेयर आदि जरूरतों के लिए पर्याप्त जितनी फंडिंग की आवश्यकता है उतनी फंडिंग होती रहे। दूसरी तरफ यह भी देखना होता है एक्सपेंडिचर पर भी नियंत्रण बना रहे। ऐसे में सभी अनावश्यक खर्चों पर नियंत्रण और जरूरतों के लिए धन उपलब्ध कराने के लिए आपकी व्यापक रूप से सराहना हुई है। और निर्मला सीतारमण जी ने एयर इंडिया का प्राइवेटाइजेशन, जिसका पिछले कई डिकेड्स में बार बार प्रयास किया गया और वह नहीं हो पाया, बराबर असफलता ही हाथ लगी, फेयर और ट्रांसपेरेंट मैनर से सफलतापूर्वक करने का काम किसी ने किया है तो निर्मला सीतारमण ने किया है। और उसमें श्रीमती सीतारमण की बजट मेकिंग, श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण की बजट मेकिंग आइसिंग ऑन द केक है। कोविड की पहली लहर के दौरान जब फिस्कल फायर पावर को कंजर्व किया गया, तब आपके फैसले पर कुछ लोगों द्वारा सवाल उठाया गया था, लेकिन उनका फैसला तब सही साबित हुआ जब अवेलेबल फिस्कल फायर पावर महामारी की एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड के दौरान हमारे काम आया। अशेषाम कल्पयेद्राजा योगक्षेमान तंद्रतः, अर्थात किसी राष्ट्र का राजधर्म किसी भी विधि से जनता का कुशल क्षेम और कल्याण ही है। किसी भी राष्ट्र का राजधर्म, कि राजा का भी राजधर्म जनता का कैसे कल्याण हो, उनके वेलफेयर के लिए कैसे वह कर सकता है, यह उसका राजधर्म है। मैं समझता हूं इसी भावना के अनुरूप हमारे वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण जी ने काम किया है। मैं उन्हें फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया के रूप में उनकी स्टर्लिंग परफॉर्मेंस के लिए मैं बधाई देता हूं। और इसके अलावा कॉरपोरेट अफेयर्स मिनिस्टर के रूप में आप रेगुलेशन को रैशनलाइज करने का लगातार प्रयास कर रही हैं, और हमारे सिस्टम में अनेक तरह के ऐसे प्रोसीजर्स थे जिनकी वजह से बिजनेस अनावश्यक बर्डन्ड हुआ करते थे। ऐसे में बिजनेसेस की सहूलियत के लिए आपने प्रोसेस सिंप्लीफिकेशन और री इंजीनियरिंग जैसे रिफॉर्म्स भी किए हैं, और इसके साथ साथ रेगुलेटरी आर्किटेक्चर में ब्यूरोक्रेटिक लेयर्स को भी कम करना आपका एक मेजर अचीवमेंट है। और साथियों, ऐसे जाने न जाने कितने रूल्स और रेगुलेशंस अभी मौजूद थे जिनकी रेलेवेंस खत्म हो चुकी थी। ऐसे में यूजलेस और इलॉजिकल रूल्स को समाप्त करना भी आप द्वारा लाए गए रिफॉर्म्स में ही शामिल है। आपके इस तरह के प्रयासों ने माननीय प्रधानमंत्री के मिनिमम गवर्नमेंट मैक्सिमम गवर्नेंस के डायरेक्टिव को चरितार्थ किया है। ऐसे रिफॉर्मेटिव स्टेप्स के लिए आज आपको सम्मानित किया जा रहा है। मुझे विश्वास है कि आप लगातार इसी ऊर्जा से आगे भी कार्य करती रहेंगी और हमारी इकॉनमी को नई दिशा प्रदान करेंगी। मैं इतना ही कहना चाहूँगा, इस देश को आपके ऊपर गर्व है। इस अवसर पर और अधिक कुछ न कहते हुए मैं इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स को धन्यवाद देता हूं कि उन्होंने मुझे इस कार्यक्रम में आमंत्रित किया और मुझे इस तरह की एक इलॉस्ट्रियस ऑडियंस के सामने अपने विचार रखने का यह अवसर भी दिया है। मैं अपनी स्टीम्ड कोलीग श्रीमती नीला सीतारमण, फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडिया सहित सभी अवार्डीज को फिर से एक बार तहे दिल बधाई देता हूं, और सभी अवार्डीज, द इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स और आप सभी को मेरी बहुत बहुत हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ अपना निवेदन समाप्त करता हूं।
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the action part of the evening and tonight's ceremony, in which the two honorable ministers among us will be giving out this year's trophies. Now, apart from requesting no jokes on spouses or their appearance, may I ask members of the audience as well as the winners to refrain from getting offended and randomly walking up and slapping me. I saw this on another show. It did not go down well. So much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without wasting any more time, the first award of the evening is the ET Global Indian Award. Now, as you all know, global boardrooms are getting crowded with Indian suits and skirts, so choosing this winner has literally been a planetary process. Even as he's been in the US for the last 30 years, Deloitte's global CEO considers himself to be a Rohtak boy. He happens to be the first Asian to head the largest of the Big Four professional services firms, operating in 150 countries with over 3 lakh employees. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to announce the 2021 ET Global Indian Puneet Renjan. Congratulations. Ms. Sitaraman, I request you to please present this award. Thank you, ma'am. Sir, request you to please say a few words also. Thank you.
That joke was not a very good one.
No, sir. But I thought about it for 6 months straight. This is where
right.
my life is heading.
Well, listen, thank you very much, Honorable Finance Minister. It's wonderful to be with you, and Honorable Raksha Mantri, Vineet Jain. Thank you for this. It's a great honor to get this. It's particularly pleasing because my mother is here. And she's sitting back there. And you know, I grew up in Rohtak, and as an 18-year-old, when I didn't go into medical school or engineering, I think she worried as to what I would do. So I think this is good validation that I finally arrived. So I'm glad that she's here to witness this. But this is really an award for Deloitte. It is remarkable to me that it's the only firm that has an Asian leading it. I think it's a great testament to the wonderful firm that I get to lead, the honor that I get from my 15,000 partners. I do want to comment on 3 things that really please me about this award. One being the Global Indian. India, I believe this is India's century. The Honorable Finance Minister talked about a number of things that make this a unique time for India. And I'm looking forward to what India would do solving some of the most complex issues that we face as humankind: climate, digitization, upskilling and skilling, particularly of women and girls. And so I think this is a great opportunity to be an Indian and to represent India. So it's a great pleasing opportunity. The other thing the Raksha Mantri talked about, and Vineet, you mentioned excellence. You know, when I went to the United States 40 years ago, Milton Friedman's refrain was the prevailing thought: the role of business is business. Worry about the bottom line and everything else will take care of itself. I think the Raksha Mantri said something that was actually pretty fascinating. And I'm glad that he mentioned that we at Deloitte put effort into the COVID response in India. I'll admit something, we did that not because it was the right thing to do. We did it because it was the right thing to do. We did it because it was the right business thing to do. The impact that it had on my 350,000 professionals was profound. In the last 7 years, as an organization, we have grown 70%. We're the #1 professional services firm, the #1 quality firm, the #1 brand, commercial services brand. And yet, we give 3% of our net income back into the communities that we live and work in. And it's exactly because of what the defense minister said. It is the right business thing to do. We will hire 70,000 people this year. Invariably, they will ask, what does Deloitte do beyond its core profit motive? So corporate excellence is not just take care of business, it is take care of all your stakeholders, customers, people, and the communities that you live and work in. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, ET Global Indian of the Year, Puneet Renjan. Congratulations once again, sir. Now, the next award category is Emerging Company of the Year. And the award goes to this 17-year-old Hyderabad-based biotech firm that's been at the forefront of contract research and manufacturing services to global pharma companies, and is one of the fastest growing API companies in India. Led by founder Satyanarayana Chava, Let's hear it for ET Emerging Company of the Year, Loris Labs. Congratulations. May I request Satya Narayana Chhava to kindly grace the stage and Mr. Singh to graciously present the award. Sir, request to please say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. To demonstrate corporate excellence during the challenging period is very interesting. That reminding me, winners never cheat, even in difficult times. Once we get this award, it puts us into the more responsible situation than what we were yesterday. For us, demonstrating corporate excellence is to first take care of our stakeholder. Our first stakeholder is our employees. If we are not doing good to our employees, we are not taking care what the next level of our stakeholder is society. If you produce medicines in an unsafe environment, as the Defense Minister said, very interesting. If you produce medicines by polluting the society, we are not taking care of the society, which is our next biggest stakeholder. Third biggest stakeholder for us is our vendors and customers. That means we have to buy at the right price, pay at the right time, and produce right quality medicines and give it to the customer at the right time they need. And the fourth biggest stakeholder is shareholder. We don't want to change the sequence. For us, employee first, and then society next, and then the vendors and customers, and the last is shareholder. So for us, we never forget this principle, taking care of our colleagues, and they are our biggest stakeholder. And this credit goes to our entire employees, 5,500 strong employees. Thank you for recognizing our corporate governance, and I thank ET for doing this. And I admire the Defense Minister's speech, not compromising long-term value for short-term gains. I think we stick to that, our principle as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations once again, sir. Now, next up, ladies and gentlemen, is the Corporate Citizen Award, an award that's really all about the future of the corporate world. It's about being responsible and being profitable. This nifty 100 tech company is already future ready with its sustainable solutions and ESG policies that are setting the benchmark for India Inc. This year's ET Corporate Citizen is HCL Technologies. May I invite on stage Nidhi Pundir and of course VV Apparao to kindly receive the award, and I request Ms. Sitaraman to kindly present it. Thank you. Let's give them a huge round of applause. Sir, request you to please say a few words. Thank you, Mr. Apparao.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Honorable Finance Minister, Economic Times, for this recognition. We are privileged and honored to receive this award from yourselves. And we thank all our 225,000 HCLites working across the globe. They deserve the honor. They are the ones who are delivering a sustainable value to our customers, our investors, and communities in which we work and live. So really, it's an honor for all those 225,000 employees. As HCL Ethos, as our founder and Chairman Emeritus Sri Shiv Nadar says, is built on the principles of innovation, entrepreneurship, community, and people-centric policies. So that's what we stand for. And in this process, we request, we are all global citizens here, and it is our responsibility in terms of taking care of the communities and the future well-being of these communities. And that's where we request every one of us to look at how do we shape the environment, how do we share the environment, how do we strengthen the environment. That's where our ethos and policies are. And I take this opportunity to thank ET once again. And thanks to all of you, all the guests who have come here. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. Congratulations once again. Yes, ma'am, please.
This award is also, there are 500 people working in HCL Foundation, more than 2,000 people through 200 NGO partners, 2.4 million community beneficiaries, and it's, the human, environmental and technology capital that works in tandem to attain people, peace and prosperity agenda together. So, and on behalf of several butterflies and birds and ponds, everything that we are still counting through our biodiversity agenda. So thank you so much, ET and Deloitte, for recognizing this. It's a true validation. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, ma'am. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our next award is for lifetime achievement. Healthcare, biotech, pharma have been lifesavers for all of us in the last 2 years. Now, in 1983, when I was 3 years old, this gentleman was a practicing cardiologist in the US who started a hospital in Chennai that was inaugurated by then-President Gyani Zail Singh. Thus came into being the Apollo chain of hospitals and quality private healthcare in India. More than 40 years and 70 hospitals later, as founder and the force behind Apollo, Pratap Chandra Reddy has redefined India's healthcare system. Ladies and gentlemen, the legend and this year's ET Lifetime Achievement Award goes to Dr. Pratap Chandra Reddy. Unfortunately, Dr. Reddy can't be with us here tonight as he is unwell. We wish him a speedy recovery. We have his daughter, Preeta Reddy, with us today, who is on stage, who will receive the award on his behalf. Preeta ji, Mr. Singh, I request you to please hand over the award. Thank you so much. Congratulations once again, and we do have a video message from Dr. Reddy. Let's take a look.
Namaste and greetings. It's an honor to receive this Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm also thankful for the various business leaders who made a difference to India and made India proud that we are a nation to reckon with amongst the best in the world. I must express my sincere appreciation for the jury and recognition as health as one of the major sectors. I'm happy India over the last 3 decades, whatever I have done with the support of the great reforms that have been brought, which has made a very significant impact in transforming the healthcare of the nation. The private healthcare today is comparable, at least a couple of hundred hospitals in the country, not just Apollo, is comparable to the best hospitals anywhere in the world. Our outcomes are the same as the best in the world. I think I clearly predict that India can attract a large number of patients from overseas for the nation, and I agree with our Prime Minister and the Minister of Health saying that we should call it as Heal in India. There is another huge opportunity for healthcare for the nation. By end of 2030, there is going to be 40 million deficiency in healthcare in the world. And I think India is in a forward position to fill this gap and give huge employment opportunities. Whatever they have done for IT has made India proud. I think time has come. If I think the government of India could now give a special status for healthcare, I think healthcare will equally bring that great pride for the nation. Wish you all a healthy, happy life. God bless you all.
A huge round of applause for Dr. Pratap Chandra Reddy, the winner of the ET Lifetime Achievement Award. And with that, our next award category is Businesswoman of the Year. Ladies and gentlemen, more and more, the biggest businessmen in boardrooms today happen to be women. This year's winner is someone who understands legacy and how to build upon it. It gives me great pleasure to call on Executive Vice Chairperson of CIPLA, one of India's biggest names in the pharma industry, Samina Hamid, as ET's Businesswoman of the Year. I request Ms. Sitaraman to kindly present the award. Thank you, ma'am. Congratulations, ma'am. Request you to please say a few words.
Good evening, Honorable Defense Minister, Honorable Finance Minister, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the Times Group and the jury for honoring me this evening. I'm truly humbled by the recognition. CIPLA was started by my grandfather in 1935. And as the third generation of the founding family, I'm truly humbled to take this legacy forward. CIPLA's story is not just about making medicines, it's about changing lives, it's about saving people and providing hope to the millions of patients in India and around the world. I promise, as an Indian today, that we will continue to keep India safe and healthy forever. I owe this award tonight to several people in this room, but most importantly to my parents, who are here tonight. Thank you. Thank you for the trust, thank you for the blessings, and thank you for the unending support, because I am who you are. Also to Dr. Hamid, who couldn't be here today, who's the father of the pharmaceutical industry and my biggest mentor. To Mr. Radha, who's also in the audience, to my guardian and guide, thank you. And most importantly, to my two boys, Ayan and Rian, who are my biggest strength, but actually my biggest weakness. And as they say, for every leader, the success is reflected in their teams. And I want to thank Umang, our global CEO, as well as the 25,000 CIPLAites who come to work every single day with an unending passion and commitment to keep up our legacy of caring for life. Thank you, Team CIPLA. This one is for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Congratulations once again. And now comes the best film category, but the corporate version of it. Hence, our next category is Company of the Year. Yes, in life, one is judged by the company one keeps, and Salil Parekh keeps an iconic company as its CEO. As its cloud offering, Cobalt has helped the company rightfully believe that the sky is no limit. It gives me great pleasure to announce the ET Company of the Year. Yes, you guessed it right, Infosys. Congratulations. I'm going to request Mr. Salil Parekh to please accept the award and Mr. Singh to graciously give it away. Congratulations, sir. Request you to please say a few words.
So good evening. It's really great to be here in person with all of you. Most of us who've not been able to meet people are really delighted to see this sea of faces looking at us from standing on a podium. Infosys was built on a dream. It was a dream, technology for everyone, opportunity for everyone. It was built by visionary leaders, and it's really a delight for me that we've been able to rekindle this dream amongst everyone within India, all of the employees within Infosys, and all of our clients worldwide. Our One Infosys approach has allowed us to achieve this. And what is One Infosys? It's really all the work that we do in the digital world for our clients, with our employees, how we worked through the crisis and really emerged stronger from it, and are now poised to enter an exciting future. It is really my privilege to have participated in this incredible growth story over the past 4 years, and in many ways contributed to the Digital India. It was just delightful to hear about all of the work that has been going on in how India itself has transformed digitally and how Infosys has played a small role in supporting many of these systems. On behalf of the 300,000 employees of Infosys, I thank you to the jury, to the Economic Times and the Times Group for thinking of Infosys and for thinking of us for this award. Congratulations to all the winners, and thank you again.
Congratulations, sir. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our next award category is the ET Business Leader of the Year. As the term suggests, leads not just a company, but an industry as a whole. It is especially amazing to see such leadership in action in a year that saw unprecedented challenges for lives and livelihoods. Adar Poonawalla is a name all of us have come to recognize and value over the last 2 years. India has so far administered a staggering 1.83 billion doses of the COVID vaccine. Out of this, 83% is Covishield, manufactured by Poonawalla's Serum Institute of India. I don't think I need to say anything beyond this. Ladies and gentlemen, ET's Business Leader of the Year is Adar Poonawalla. Congratulations, sir. Request you to please grace the stage. I'm going to request Ms. Sita Raman to kindly present the award. So I request you to please say a few words.
Honorable Nirmala Sitharaman ji, Honorable Rajnath Singh ji, Devendra Fadnavis ji, distinguished business leaders, ladies and gentlemen, it is truly overwhelming, and I am truly humbled and honored to receive this because it validates and vindicates all the risks and the hard work that we took and the decisions I made at that time, along with my team, to execute at world record speed, you know, some of the things that you mentioned. No business leader can do what they've been accused of doing alone. I stand on the shoulders of all our employees and staff that have worked tirelessly through the night to achieve this. Thank you so much, Economic Times, Benetton Coleman Group, Jain family, for this recognition. You know, most CEOs don't have the luxury or good fortune of being able to argue with their chairman or their board when they have disagreements. But I'm fortunate enough to go home every day to an understanding and generous father who has allowed me the freedom to do all of this. He is here today. And I wouldn't be here without him. So many people to thank. My partner, Natasha, who has always encouraged me and pushed me to go outside of my comfort zone, much to my dislike and hesitation many times. I wouldn't be here doing what I'm doing here today without that. And I'll just take this opportunity to also mention all this would not have been possible without the decisive leadership of Shri Narendra Modi ji, who got all the ministries, ministers, bureaucrats all together with industry, with the public, to cooperate and collaborate to do, you know, it wasn't just about making vaccines and production, it was healthcare products, oxygen, testing kits. India broke all records, you know, on a monthly basis. And despite all of that, countries chose to criticize India and the way we were taking care of the pandemic and our people. And, you know, India's response has been appropriate with its action instead of using words to defend what we have been doing. So I must acknowledge and congratulate the leadership. And I just pray and hope that this momentum of this great government that we're fortunate to have continues in ease of doing business and so many reforms that we've heard about the distinguished ministers talk about as well. And lastly, I would like to just dedicate and remind everyone, and I'd like to dedicate my award to the countless healthcare workers of our country who put themselves at risk, knowing very well what the risks were, and even today continue to protect us, from harm's way, and their sacrifices should never be forgotten. So I humbly dedicate this award to them. Thank you once again, ET and everyone.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Singh, I think that today's final award, this evening's final award, the Business Reformer of the Year, will have to be given just by you, because our winner is a former Defense Minister of India, has steered the Indian economy through the pandemic and provided life and livelihood support to hundreds of millions. Undertaking reforms on the trot of tax administration, of budget transparency, of public sector banks, of reaping a record harvest of the goods and service tax, she has been the reformer's reformer, which is why ET's Business Reformer of the Year had to be Union Finance and Corporate Affairs Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Congratulations, ma'am. Sir, I request you to hand over the word. Congratulations, ma'am. Would you like to say a few words? No problem. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji, who is the ET Business Reformer of the Year. I would request once again all our winners of the evening to kindly gather on stage for a wonderful photograph. So could we have you all on stage, please? This photograph will be one for the keeps. I also request Shobna and Sunita to please join us on stage. Thank you. Thank you all so much, and congratulations, and thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for making this year's ET Awards such a memorable one, and most importantly for gathering here in person after what seems like an age. Thank you once again to our partner Deloitte. The good news is the bar is open. Please do join us for cocktails and dinner. Keep your masks and profits up. Corporate India and the Indian economy needs your booster shots. Thank you for being such a gracious audience, and congratulations once again to all our well-deserving winners. Good night.